Hello world, it is Monday, November 11th. I hope everybody is having a great start to their week so far. I'm sorry I didn't post up a video in the past 2 weeks. Things have been crazy over here in Connecticut with, as you guys probably know, with the storm and stuff like that. I didn't lose power per se. I'm living here at UConn in Stores, Connecticut. And we didn't lose power at all here on campus, which was kind of surprising, but I couldn't really have a chance to make the video because it was crazy with the schedule. Like, my fiance, she was coming over almost every day, doing laundry, charging up her stuff because she didn't have any power at her house, nor was classes at her school. She goes to Central Connecticut, and her classes were canceled for the entire week because the school didn't have power. And so with that kind of with all that, and plus all the situations, and I really couldn't have the time to kind of sit down and try to make a video during the week. So now, start of a new week, everything has power, everybody has power. So now this is my chance to finally make a video. So today, like I said in my last video, that is going to be a video with a list of my 5 favorite bass players, or the bass players that have been very influential to me. So let's get started. So number 5 on my list is Mark Hoppus, who is the bassist for both bassist and vocalist for Blink-182 and his own band, Plus 44. So Mark Hoppus was sort of the whole reason I got into bass playing. When I first moved to Connecticut about 6 years ago, a lot of the new friends that I was starting to meet in Connecticut, they were all huge. I was starting to meet people, hang out with people who are musicians. Some people who are in band, in orchestra, in chorus, or some people who just played drums or played guitar or any of that sort of instruments. But I really didn't find a lot of people that played bass. And listening to Blink-182 and listening how Mark Hoppus, really his bass playing was so prominent in the band, it just made me really want to go out, A, just to be different and play bass, and B, just to, and I haven't regretted that decision. I love playing bass, and like I said, Mark Hoppus, he was the first bass player that made me so proud to be a bassist. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever listen to any rock recordings and stuff like that, rock albums. A lot of the times you will hear the bassists, you won't hear the bass at all. Like, the bass will be overpowered by the guitar, by the drums, by the singing, and the bassist is sort of just thrown off into the corner, kind of like the neglected member, But what I liked about Mark Hoppus, and a lot of punk rock bass for that matter, was that they didn't really try to hide the basses. They made the bass loud, they made the bass prominent, and Mark Hoppus was my first exposure into that. Some really great bass tracks from him are Carousel from Cheshire Cat and Buddha from the demo and debut album of Blink-182, and I Miss You from the 2003 self-titled work. So number 4 on my list is Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney, pretty self-explanatory. One of the members of the Beatles, played bass in the Beatles. He also did Wings, and he's also one of the biggest music rock stars in the entire globe. What's the funny thing about Paul McCartney, I don't know if you guys know this, that Paul McCartney, he didn't start out playing bass. They had this other guy, Stu Stifficle. I'm probably messing up that name to some degree. He played bass for the Beatles originally, but what happened was he left. So essentially what they did, I'm kind of over-exaggerating / humoring it up a little bit. They drew straws, and Paul got the straw that said he had to play bass. But not many people know this, that he's actually a pretty fucking good bassist. Actually a really good bassist. And I didn't notice this until much later in life. I used to listen to the Beatles when I was a little kid. Sort of dropped out of listening to the Beatles, and then when I went to high school, I started listening to the Beatles again, along with my exposure to other forms of classic rock. And Paul McCartney and listening to the Beatles and listening to Paul McCartney with my ear as a bassist, I really picked up on how good of a bassist he was. If I had to cite some key tracks for Paul McCartney for his really good bass lines, I Saw Her Standing There, and Come Together from the Beatles, and from Wings, Silly Love Song. Has a really fantastic bass part to it. And now let's keep moving on here with number 3. My third favorite bassist / influential bassist is Matt Freeman. Matt Freeman is the bassist for Rancid, and before that he was the bassist of Operation Ivy. One of the problems, as much as the punk rock bass playing was sort of my stepping stone into the bass foray, listening to punk rock bass, because punk rock is so fast, it's so simple, it's the same basic 3 chords a song. Of course, I'm generalizing, but that's the basic idea. Punk rock's basic idea is simplicity, that anybody can play it, and really, the way I see bass as a bass player, a bass has to have some sort of soul to it, you know? The way that and just the bass playing for me has to have soul to it, and that's the problem with a lot of punk rock bass. And even as much as I love Mark Hoppus, he could be guilty of this too, especially in Blink's early tracks. There was a lot of that sort of you play the bass so fast, and it's just there really isn't. It really kind of cuts the soul from the instrument. And what Matt Freeman from Rancid does, Rancid's a great punk rock band to start out with, but the members themselves are so talented. This allows, I think, and also especially Matt Freeman, he's able to give the punk rock, the bass, a soul to it, and it's just so fantastic to hear that, to hear the bass just sing, the way he makes the bass sing, and it's so fantastic. I mean, to really name any good Rancid tracks, just listen to the Rancid albums, because he's so prominently featured, and he gets so many bass solos, and they don't try to hide Matt Freeman. They they constantly bring out Matt Freeman and his virtuosity and his awesomeness to the band. So number 2 of my favorite bassist of all time is Roger Waters, who was the bassist for Pink Floyd. Roger Waters, he was after I moved away from punk rock, and I started exploring classic rock stuff, and and all those other factors. Roger Waters was kind of first person I turned to, because in terms of my music listening in high school, it was Blink-182, Beatles, and Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, that sort of thing. And Pink Floyd was really for me, Pink Floyd is just one of my favorite rock bands of all time. And what's really kind of cool about Roger Waters, say what you want about Roger Waters and his ego and his all that stuff, he's a really good bassist. He is a phenomenal bassist, to say. And a lot of the bass tracks that I have played or learned to play have been from Roger Waters. And seeing how Roger Waters was able, as a bassist, to have such a central force, much like Paul McCartney, I guess much like Mark Hoppus to an extent too in Blink-182, to have a central force in the band is sort of really influential, because like I said, usually the bass player is sort of the neglected person who's kind of they try to push into the corner and pretend they don't exist, And seeing Roger Waters have such a prominent place in Pink Floyd, for me, as starting out, was just really sort of magnificent for me, and really sort of influential. Key bass tracks from Roger Waters, Money is really good, In the Flesh, that sort of stuff, and just other stuff from Roger Waters is really great also. Number 1 for my all-time favorite bassist is John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin, and recently of Them Crooked Vultures. Very similar story with Roger Waters, in that John Paul Jones was sort of my transition from playing punk rock bass to exploring other mediums of bass playing, including classic rock. And John Paul Jones I just sort of devoured. I mean, his bass parts are ranging from, there's very simple bass parts like Dazed and Confused, to stuff like Kashmir and other bass parts that are just so complex. And so the thing was that John Paul Jones, he in a band like Led Zeppelin, where you had one of the greatest drummers of all time in John Bonham, one of the greatest singers in I'm not going to use my fingers to count ever again. I'll just count like this normally. When you have one of the greatest drummers of all time in John Bonham, 2, one of the greatest singers of all time in Robert Plant, and 3, one of the greatest guitarists in all that time in Jimmy Page, it's easy to see how somebody like a bassist could easily get overshadowed by that. But John Paul Jones, he let himself become just as important as the members, as the other members. Him and John Bonham together, they made probably one of the best rhythm sections in rock and roll. And John Paul Jones' bass playing is so magnificently good. I mean, it's just phenomenal to see what he can do with that instrument. And also the fact is that he's also a multi-instrumentalist too. Not only did he play bass, he played keyboards, he played mandolin, he just played a whole other foray of instruments, and he held his own in one of the greatest rock bands of all time. And he's definitely, him included, Led Zeppelin has just probably one of the best, most talented lineups I have ever known, ever seen, at least in my opinion. So key tracks by John Paul Jones. Definitely Dazed and Confused. That's probably the biggest one that mostly everybody knows. A Whole Lot of Love, also fantastic bass part. Black Dog also has a really good bass line also. Just a lot of any Led Zeppelin stuff, and just like something with Matt Friedman. Just excellent bass parts all around. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today then. I'm going to remember, I'm changing up my format for the videos, so my next video will be a current event vlog, whatever. And what that's going to be, I don't know. Just a matter of me paying attention to the news and seeing where the current events lie and what sort of things kind of pique my interest or I have strong opinions about, so I can discuss and talk about with you guys and share and try to get your opinions about them. So, alright, so that pretty much covers it for today. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great week. And if you are in the Northeast or in Connecticut, and hope you guys all have power, hope everybody's okay. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So, alright guys, I will talk to you later then. Alright, peace.